So, just when he seems set to make his exit, David Taylor snatches the frame. Ray Reardon still leads him, though, by 8 frames to 4.
And that was Taylor's last stand. Reardon took the next to win the match. So Reardon then is into the quarter-finals. Here's the list. Higgins to play Thorne on Wednesday. Reardon to wait to see whether Cliff Wilson beats Cliff Thorburn or loses to him. That's tomorrow's match. And then the other half, eventually, Tony Knowles plays Kirk Stevens on Thursday. Jimmy White tomorrow. We'll be watching Tony Meo and Steve Davis. Another round 2 match. We'll be watching it as well, and we'll be starting here on BBC1 at 2 o'clock. And at this time of the night, it looks as if Steve Davis has got exactly the right idea. Good night.
Now the news headlines from John Humphreys.
The Prime Minister has said there are new dangers facing democracy from minority groups who conspire to subvert and defy the law. At one end of the spectrum, she said, were the terrorist gangs within the country's borders. At the other, the hard left conspiring to use union power and the machinery of local government. In an interview later on ITN, she said she would never negotiate with people who use coercion and violence to achieve their objectives. The Home Secretary has accused Arthur Scargill of being the miners' tyrant. Mr. Britton said Mr. Scargill's shameful silence in refusing to condemn violence or restrain his followers from carrying it out showed all the world where the responsibility lay. 11 miners from West Yorkshire have appeared in court in Pontefract after the attack on a working miner in his home last week. Michael Fletcher from Castleford is still in hospital. 6 of the accused were remanded in custody. Britain's biggest union, the Transport and General, has been fined £200,000 by the High Court for contempt. The union had refused to call off the strike at Austin Rover earlier this month, despite a High Court ruling. Asked if his union would pay, the General Secretary, Moss Evans, said, "Mind your own business." The Labour leader Neil Kinnock, who's visiting Moscow, says the Soviet Union is ready to make a fresh start on arms talks with the United States without conditions. Mr. Kinnock had met President Cheryenko for 2 hours. He also said the Russians had promised to scrap those missiles aimed at Britain if a future Labour government got rid of all nuclear weapons based here. A United Nations official who's just toured the famine areas of Central Africa has warned that Chad is facing its worst drought in living memory. Without immediate aid, he said, a famine like that in Ethiopia is imminent. And finally, one late football result in the FA Cup non-league. Dagenham beat Swindon 2-1 in the replay of their first round game. Dagenham will be at home to Peterborough in the second round. And that's it from us. Good night.
From the news to the weather, and that comes from Michael Fish.
Good evening to you. It's a case of batten down the hatches again. There's some very stormy weather indeed on the way at the moment. At least it's going to stay mild, though. The winds are going to be coming in from the southwest. But, of course, the weather's going to be pretty unsettled. There are fronts coming in, and they're going to bring belts of rain across the country from time to time. And actually, very gradually during the next few days, as the low transfers across just to the north of Scotland, the winds will eventually be pulled in from the west and later on still from the northwest. So after a mild start, it will, if anything, perhaps get just a little bit colder. If we look at the picture for midday tomorrow, you can see just how unsettled the weather is and just how many isobars there are. So it's obviously going to be extremely windy everywhere. In fact, if we look at tonight, the winds have already begun to pick up in western parts, so a very stormy night in store. The rain's pushing in already into many western parts, and during the course of the night, it'll get across the whole of Scotland, into northern parts of England, the Wales and the west as well. In the more central and southern parts, though, the night has started off fine and dry with a touch of frost, but here too, temperature should be rising later on as the cloud spreads across and the wind increases. And then tomorrow, well, the emphasis is on a very windy day indeed. A fairly mild one, though, 11 degrees centigrade, 52 Fahrenheit. Most places will be cloudy, and every now and again there'll be some outbreaks of rain, although the worst of the rain in the southeastern corner probably not coming along until quite late in the day, and some drier interludes as well over the rest of England and Wales. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, although it'll be a wet start, I think the rain will ease off and give way to brighter weather, although in that brighter weather there'll be some pretty squally showers. That's it. Have a very good night to you.
The weather details for Scotland follow the late-night Scottish news. The Parliamentary Ombudsman has severely criticised the Department of Health and Security over the handling of a claim by a victim of asbestos-related cancer. Ronald Hill had worked as a joiner on the Glasgow Red Road flats a site which an independent report later said generated asbestos dust grossly exceeding acceptable levels. Mr. Hill claimed a disablement benefit, but by the time the first offer of benefit came from the DHSS a year later, Mr. Hill had died. The Ombudsman called the delay inexcusable neglect. Celtic's European Cup Winners' Cup second round second leg replay with Rapid Vienna is to be played at Manchester United's ground Old Trafford on the 12th of next month. The Celtic captain Danny McGrain will be allowed to play, but the Rapid defender Reinhard Keinost and the team coach Otto Barek, who were suspended during the match at Parkhead 3 weeks ago, will remain suspended. The three-man crew of a fishing boat were rescued tonight off the Galloway coast. The Leon Janine signalled she was in trouble in Kirkcudbright Bay. A lifeboat was launched and took the crew on board just before the fishing boat sank. Detectives investigating Caroline Hogg's murder have been told that another little girl was abducted by a scruffy-looking man in Portobello only a few days before 5-year-old Caroline disappeared. The 4-year-old girl from Edinburgh was rescued by a passer-by who saw the child with a man. Now police want to speak to the passer-by, a woman described as about 50 years of age with blonde hair swept back into a bun. An emergency meeting of the Confederation of Shipbuilding and Engineering Unions has been called for tomorrow in an attempt to end the strike at Yarrow Shipyard on the Clyde. More than 4,000 men walked out on Friday following a dispute over a 3-minute cut in the time workers are allowed for cleaning up at the end of a shift. Well, now before the weather forecast, a storm warning for the whole of Scotland. The wind will become southerly tonight, and between 3 a.m. and 11 a.m. it will reach gale or storm force, with gusts of 60 to 80 miles per hour accompanied by heavy rain. Many roads will be seriously affected. And that takes us appropriately to the weather forecast for Scotland for tonight and tomorrow. Outbreaks of rain in the west will extend to all areas overnight and become heavy over much of the country. Southerly winds will increase, reaching gale or severe gale force in many places. Tomorrow will start cloudy with further periods of heavy rain. During the afternoon, however, western parts will become brighter and showery, though some of the showers could be rather heavy. Temperatures will be near or above normal, with winds moderating later tomorrow. And that's the forecast for Scotland for tonight and tomorrow. Before we close, a look at programmes for tomorrow evening on BBC Scotland at 5 to 7. Nevis Hughes is off on her rounds in the District Nurse. The Snooker at 7:25. Then at 8:10, more detective work with Cagney and Lacey. Chris finds herself in the nightmarish situation of having to shoot a teenager. To play at 9:25 is a comedy about two school leavers who discover a certain skill in picking winners at the racetrack. At 10:35, in Imprint, Fraser Grigger and Liz Lochhead inspect the world of romantic fiction. With another session of snooker at 11:05, that's the lineup for Tuesday evening on BBC Scotland. Our programmes for Monday have drawn to a close at 17 minutes past midnight. This is James O'Hara on Broadcasting House in Glasgow, thanking you for being with us and wishing you a very good night.